All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the Sherwood School Board to order for November 18th, 2020. And I would ask if Mike Highland and Jessica Adamson could turn on their screens so that we know we have a quorum. There's Jessica, so we have a quorum. I'll go ahead and dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance and move straight to the consent agenda. So everyone's had a chance to review the items there. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move the consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries, and we've lost Sue, it looks like. But we have 3 of us, so I think we're still good to go.
Yeah, my camera's not working at the moment, sorry.
Oh, no. Okay, no problem. And Sue's back. All right, so we'll move on to reports and start with Superintendent Dr. Cording.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors. First of all, I just want to say that I have continued to do some job shadows with staff, most notably licensed staff members since our last board meeting. And I just continue to be so thankful for the work that they're doing. And all that I learn when I'm able to spend time with a teacher, most of the time virtually, as he or she is preparing for a lesson, and then the opportunities to actually see that lesson in action later. There have been so many things that I've learned along the way, far too many to detail here, but I'm just really thankful and for the classified and certified staff members who, you know, were truly vulnerable enough to invite me in, if you will, to watch and learn, really because I wanted to become more familiar with what this journey looks like for them in CDL. I'm just so thankful. So that continues to absolutely be a highlight and a bright spot. As we noted in our work session earlier this evening, our team continues to work really hard on tending to first what was a change in the metrics. It just was a few short weeks ago, but it sort of feels like longer than that. And then recently the announcement by the governor for the statewide freeze and just what that means for us as it relates to limited in-person instruction, athletics, all of the various components and the really hard decisions that have to be made usually as a result of those changes. So a lot of work always being done in those areas. And last, but certainly not least, another highlight. Yesterday morning for 2 hours, our administrators gathered via Zoom with our equity facilitator and trainer, Yashika Island. And that is her name, and she works for the ESD. And we had the pleasure of working with her last year, and our administrators are continuing in that professional development with her this year, and yesterday launched that work again for us as we continue to just strive to be anti-racist leaders and the work that goes along with that. So that was a wonderful morning yesterday, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Allen, and I conclude my report.
Great, thank you. Our ASB student representative Ainsley was not able to be here tonight, but she did submit a brief written report that Ms. Andrag is going to read.
Yes, thank you. So on behalf of Ainsley Holloway, this is her report. Good evening, board members. A lot has happened since our last meeting. I think you will all be very pleased to know that we started our own Black Student Union Committee and leadership. They began strategizing what we would be doing and how we would push it out to the student body. Along with that, this week was supposed to be Cancer Awareness Week. However, on Tuesday, we decided it would be best to push it back until December, when there will hopefully not be a pause. Aside from school, we have 2 cross-country runners in Nike's virtual national race this Saturday, Jeffrey Rogers and Nance. I hope I said that right. Nancy is new to the Sherwood community along with her sister Sophie, and she has recently broken our school record for the 5K by 0.05 seconds. Our boys in football have been fortunate enough to be able to scrimmage on Halloween in costumes, and it was wonderful to see. We have 1 more week of the fall mini season, and the pause didn't really affect the sports besides volleyball, whose last practice was last Wednesday. I hope all of you have a great night. I apologize for not being there, but Southern Oregon does not have the best service. And that concludes the ASB report.
Great, thank you. Next up is SEA, Mr. Kyler Pace.
Thank you, Superintendent Cordy, Chair Allen, and directors. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight and give you an update from SEA. With each week that goes by, we continue to pass benchmarks in our school year while still adjusting to this new way of teaching. Most recently, our middle and high school has completed their first quarter, and we've also successfully completed our first parent-teacher conferences at all 3 levels. Overwhelmingly, teachers received positive feedback from families regarding comprehensive distance learning, and conducting conferences over Zoom seemed to work well for both families and teachers. Many teachers even reported 100% or near 100% attendance from their families. While it was difficult to be on Zoom for so long, teachers found the time valuable to connect with their families and share progress that their students have made so far this year. The recent change in the metrics to in-person learning has caused some anxiety with some of our educators. When the metrics were announced, we immediately began hearing some concerns from a few members who had questions regarding when we would reopen and what safety precautions would be in place. And now that we've had a chance to dig a little deeper into what the metrics are going to mean for us going forward, and with increasing case rate in Washington County, we now see that the immediate need is to continue discussions around limited in-person instruction. SEA and the district has begun discussions earlier this week around limited in-person instruction, and we look forward to continuing to work together to bring our kids back into our schools. One thing that we continued to hear from our colleagues is the need for more collaboration time, and we appreciate the district reinstating our early release days to give our teachers the time they need to meet together as a team, evaluate what's working well for their students, and to determine how to modify their curriculum and just do what's best in this distance learning environment to help our students succeed. And with that, that is the end of my report, and I'll give it back to Chair Allen.
Great, thank you very much. We don't have an OSCA report tonight. So next up is City Councilor Rosner.
Thanks, Chair Allen, board members, Superintendent Cordy. A couple things for you tonight. I missed the last 2 meetings. I do apologize for that. It's been busy and I had some overlap in my schedules, but I do have a few things I want to cover. First of all, I want to thank those of you that attended the City Council work session last night. We had a robust conversation around UGB expansion. I almost hesitate to bring that up because of the challenges we had around that 3 years ago, but this is going to be a much easier process this time around. We're really, this cycle for expanding the urban growth boundary, the city is really not interested at this point in a big residential ask, which I'm sure you guys will be glad to hear. We're more focused on commercial land, jobs land, to help bring balance to our tax base in town. And you know, my ultimate goal is that you can live and work in Sherwood, which is really difficult to do now. So we're really looking at a potential ask this cycle with Metro around commercial, industrial, light industrial, business type opportunities for the city. So again, thank you guys for attending last night. I think it was important to show that we're partners whenever we discuss expanding our city limits or our boundaries, and which for you guys means more students in the classrooms, and we need to work together on that. So I do appreciate it. We also, today, we had our first meeting with citizen/staff committee to examine exploring a new urban renewal agency for Sherwood. For those that are listening or those that may not know what that is, but it's basically a way of using tax increments to fund public projects. The Art Center downtown, the new City Hall, the library, all the upgrades we did to the downtown area about 8 or 9 years ago. Pat, I think you were on Planning Commission during that.
Actually, I was on the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee back then.
There you go. There you go. All of that was funded through a URA. It's just a way of using tax dollars without actually increasing the tax burden on the individual constituent within the city. So we're not talking about raising taxes for folks. It's just about how do we reprioritize those taxes. But we are looking at a URA. I think your finance director, Phil, is on that committee. He was there today. We thank you guys for letting him do that. And we have representation from all the different agencies within our tax district on that committee. But we're looking at land on 99 on the west side, North Sherwood, the Tonquin employment area, and redrawing the boundaries for the current URA to make that happen. So, and the types of projects we're considering is basically infrastructure to encourage more business to come into town here. So it'd be building out roads in the Tonquin area, and potentially it may even be used to fund potentially part of the pedestrian bridge and some of those projects, and could be used to fund some of the cost for the tunnel or lifting up 99 at Cedar Creek, so we can get people and pedestrians and kids across the highway at that point too, especially as they start using the new middle school or the new old middle school that we have over there. So anyway, so that's been a fun process, and we're going to be having another meeting in mid-December to move that process along. We also had, I'll make sure I got UGB. A lot of you know that the governor's office announced $55 million in additional relief for businesses impacted by this pause. So our Bruce Coleman, our economic development manager is already engaged on that, and we're working hard to try to make sure that all the businesses and our indoor recreational facilities in town can apply for that very fast and be successful with that as it becomes available. I think. Oh, and then if you're interested, we had a session last night in our regular meeting on sign code. It was very exciting, and it's one of those things that seems really boring, but a lot of people are really passionate about sign code in town, and basically where we can put signs and what they can look like and square footage and distance from a road. I think you guys ran into a little bit of that when you were trying to get the sign for the high school. We had to get a special dispensation for that, but we're going through our sign code because there's a lot of folks that don't like the banner flags that you see all over town. That's kind of what initiated that. Anyways, that was fun, exciting stuff. That's all I have. And as always, I will end with, do you have any questions?
Hey, Tim, remind me on the urban renewal district, the existing district, has it expired or does it have a little time yet to go?
So we've expended all the funds, but it has, I think it expires, don't quote me on this, in 2023. We made more than we needed in that district, so we're in really good shape on that. And as part of this new district, we're actually looking at reducing the size of that down to a level to support the remaining payout on the bonds and being able to create this new district.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Councilor Rosner? All right, thanks very much.
And thank you guys. And forgive me if I drop out early. I got to go jump into something else, so I apologize.
No worries.
All right, thanks guys.
All right, let's move on to a fiscal quarterly update. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I think Christine's going to bring that up for me. Perfect. Good evening, Chair Allen, Superintendent Cordy, Board of Directors. Thank you for the opportunity to come and provide the first quarterly fiscal update of this school year. Christine, if you'd advance to the next slide, please. Tonight, we're just going to cover a couple topics, enrollment and current, and then also the projections, and then kind of a little bit of discussion at the state level related to budget. As always, please feel free to jump in and ask me questions as we go along, but we also will have time at the end for conversation there as well. Next, thank you. So we'll start with our kindergarten enrollment, as this is really, it sets the pace for us in future years. Not surprisingly, we are down this year, and I've heard a couple of my colleagues who have said that given the circumstances, if they had a kindergarten age student, they would probably defer a year if possible. We may see these numbers rebound if we can bring K-3 back, but as you heard this evening, that's a ways out. We certainly hope these numbers rebound next fall, although that could set up an interesting long-term issue for us to track. Specifically, we could end up with a bubble of students that need additional assistance or materials as they work their way through the district over the next 12 to 13 years. Next slide, please. The total enrollment is down significantly year over year, and even since the start of school, we've lost another 100 students. And this is similar to what our colleagues in other districts are seeing. When we look at individual classes, we see that the greatest decrease in elementary classes, grades 1 through 3, is between 32 and 44 students. Grades 4 through 8 are seeing declines in the 9 to 29 range. And then 10 through 12, we see declines of 8 to 18. And what was a bit of a surprise to me was we had an increase at the 9th grade. Now it's typical for us to pick up students at that grade level each year as students come back from charter school, or not come back, but come to us from charter schools or K-8 private schools. The surprise was that it's a full 25 student increase at that level, which is our biggest jump since the fall of 2016. So it was significant. And the increase is due to 36 new enrollments for the district and not our Sherwood Charter School students advancing to 9th grade. Across the district, we had 185 new enrollments. And so this fall, those are students that did not previously attend that have signed up to come to Sherwood. So some interesting data there. Our cloud campus, want to share these numbers with you, currently has 590 students enrolled. The 1 through 5 grades are pretty evenly spread out with 42 to 50 students per grade. The kinders are a little bit less at 30 students in the cloud campus. Our middle school campus has roughly 55 students per grade, and the high school has between 35 and 46 per grade. And these grade counts actually follow the same pattern of our overall enrollment, with elementary grades having the fewest students, middle school the largest, and then the high school kind of in the middle. And of course, as we talked earlier, it remains to be seen if those families will keep their students in the cloud campus once we open up for face-to-face instruction. Christine, if we may. So this chart shows the number of students who have transferred out to either a virtual charter school or to the homeschool. The blue columns are for previous years, while the orange columns are new transfers for this year. When we combine, that gives us a total of 613 students in either charter schools or being homeschooled. And this is a tracking of the intent to enroll in those options, but doesn't actually tell us like if a homeschool student has in fact continued homeschooling or if they found another educational opportunity. And because of this, we are pretty confident in the orange columns, but not as much in the blue column. So really, we know the kids that left this year likely went, 88 of them likely went to charter schools and 191 likely went to homeschool. But of the kids in the previous years, we're not sure if they remain in those particular educational opportunities. And then we are not able to track transfers to private schools. Moving on to our budget, we have some good news and some news that concerns us. On the positive side, we know our PERS rates for the next biennium are going to go down, which is a significant savings to the district. We also know from the September state revenue forecast that the corporate activities tax is expected to yield more for the student investment account than we received in the 2020-21 school year. And of course, we had late breaking news today with the release of the December revenue forecast that actually says the corporate activity tax is up slightly more for this year. So part of that late breaking news affects a column on the right where we were expecting about a $2.24 billion decline in state general fund revenue for the next biennium. And our education partners at the state now indicate that deficit should be below $1 billion. Regardless of the exact amount, we are likely going to have some challenging years ahead. One area of uncertainty for us is with the ADM calculations. We believe that many districts are seeing a decline in enrollment, but we don't know what that will look like. For the current year, we are okay because the ADM-E, or ADM extended calculation, which allows us to use last year's number. So our funding we're feeling confident about our funding for this current year. Since our model is a distribution model across the state and not a funding model, it is possible that if all districts lose students and the legislature doesn't decrease funding, then our funding problems may be lessened. However, if many of the students that have left the system are in fact entering charter schools, then the overall pot could be divided in a way that is problematic to our budget. Looking forward, if state funding decreases or the per ADM amount remains the same, and we remain with roughly 4,600 students, we could have a problem in the near term future years. I was on a call recently with statewide colleagues, and this was clearly one of the top legislative priorities facing COSA. Another area of uncertainty is whether the historic revenue and expenditure patterns will continue during the pandemic and throughout the recovery. So this is when we're looking back at how we've spent our money in years past versus how we have to spend it now, given the changes in our model. So we're kind of watching that carefully. We have a concern a little bit over that's been expressed over property taxes. However, the low interest rates have kept demand for real estate up, even with the economic downturn. So that also may be not as big a concern. And then lastly, and this is something we've been diving into over the last month, is the collection of fees for athletics and activities have been suspended for the time being until sports return to full participation. And we need to be watching that and looking at what are the expenditures we have and what is that overall budget for those items going to look like. And again, if we return to full sports, then we'll return to those fees. And but in the meantime, we're watching very closely. And since we are really early in the budget conversation, there are a number of questions that remain, including will the optimism for the recent revenue forecast, both September's and the one we received today, will that optimism hold for the future? How will the legislature use any available reserves? And then of course, will Congress provide an additional stimulus package that could benefit the district? And then Christine, thank you. And so these are our next steps. Before we fully engage in the budget building process, we'll spend some time here this month looking at the revenue forecast that came out today. We'll review and respond to the governor's budget when it comes out in early December. And then we'll be back to you in January to talk about some of our conclusions and start preparing for the budget cycle next spring. And our last slide is a discussion slide. So I'd be happy to entertain questions or comments.
Questions or comments for Mr. Rose? I think back to last March or April when Jessica made her comments about the whole year will need a giant asterisk. And I think that proves itself to be true every week.
Agreed.
All right, then let's go ahead and move on to the Sia Grant Agreement. Again, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair Allen. So the district has been awarded a Student Success Act Student Investment Account grant in the amount of $1.277 million from the Oregon Department of Education. The grant gave specific areas in which applying districts could make investments. Those areas included meeting students' mental or behavioral health needs, increasing academic achievement, and reducing academic disparities for students for racial or ethnic groups that have historically experienced academic disparities. For students with disabilities, English language learners, there's quite a long list of groups that we can definitely focus our efforts on. As you know, last year, the district went through a thorough process for gathering community input to determine how best to utilize those SIA funds. The district continues to implement those plans as set forth in our application. The grant is effective as of July 1 this year and will expire June 30th of next year. We would ask that the board open a public comment period as required by conditions of the grant. And that's my report for that.
Great, and that actually reminds me of the fact that we've got both public comment on the grant and then general public comment, both of which were to be submitted prior to this point in the meeting. Ms. Andrew, do we have either kind of comment?
Let me do one quick refresh just to make sure. And we do not have anything submitted.
Great, thank you. So let's go ahead and move on to action items. First up is the Sia Grant Agreement. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair Allen. As we just discussed, the district has been awarded a Student Success Act Student Investment Account grant. And we would need the board to review and approve that grant in order to receive the funding. I would ask that the board do that at this time.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the grant as proposed by staff.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All students belong policies. First read, Ms. Andrag.
Okay, thank you. So last month, as you know, we gave you a general overview of the All Students Belong rule that had been passed by our State Board of Education. And we knew at that time that policy language was going to be provided for us to adopt a new policy, which would bring us in compliance with that rule. So for tonight, we're presenting that policy language to you. This has actually been provided by OSBA in the form of two distinct policies, one being the overall policy and the second being the administrative rule policy that spells out what the bias complaint procedure for our district needs to be. One point I did want to touch on at the last meeting during that presentation, a question was raised specific to the presence of Confederate flags on cars in the parking lot at school. We've since reviewed that language in depth and it does cover all district grounds. So that along with the other banned symbols would apply to cars in parking lots. So we just wanted to bring that clarification to you tonight in response to following up to that question. So these policies are up tonight for a first read and review.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, OSBA policy updates. An agenda item we all look forward to. Mr. Emmer.
And I'm so fortunate that I get it. So as is typical, OSBA submits policy draft updates. Tonight, we bring updates to policies in sections G and J for first read, and then we will bring those policies back for second read in next month's board meeting.
Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move to an agenda item that I just now realized I'm supposed to manage, and so I'm scrambling a little bit here. In terms of School Board Association board members, we have one nominee for the position 15 that we get to vote for. That's Leanne Larson from the Beaverton School District. Her materials were provided in the application, so I would basically ask, you have the option to either vote yes or no or abstain from voting for Leanne Larson for the position 15 on OSBA board. All those who vote yes, say aye.
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 Although I think that's all four. So just to be sure, anyone vote no or abstain? All right, in that case, we have cast our ballots with Leanne Larson from the Beaverton School District. And that brings us to the conclusion of our regular agenda items. Our next meeting will be December 9th. I would anticipate, based on where we are today, that that's likely to again be a Zoom meeting. Yes, Ms. Andrig.
Did we do a vote on the resolution that was also part of the ballot?
It would seem not.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution that was also part of that agenda item.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So again, our next meeting will be December 9th. I would anticipate that'll be a remote meeting, but we'll keep you posted in case circumstances change. And with